On today's show, with the start of the Capitals training camp right around the corner, it stands to be a fresh start for some new Capitals players.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the Sirius XM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called the Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about how the Capitals are getting closer and closer to the start of the official training camp, which is set to start around mid-September. And with it, a fresh start for some players that are looking for bounce-back seasons. Pierre-Luc Dubois comes to mind. Radish, players like this that are looking to get a fresh start. And the Capitals, I think that could be a great place for them to get that start. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll talk about how there's the possibility that Martin Fehervary will miss the start of the season due to an injury. And then a little bit later, we'll talk about one former Cap that regrets leaving the Capitals. But just to get it going here, talking about that fresh start for some Capitals players. Some of them are big upgrades. And I would say that a lot of the players that were brought into this team are looking for fresh starts. If you take a look at it, Pierre-Luc Dubois, of course, is looking for a bounce-back season compared to the one that he had with LA last season. You take a look at Andrew Mangiapane. He is a guy that can score goals, but is trying to find that goal-scoring touch that he had a few years ago. Jakob Chychrun, another guy that's looking for a fresh start in a new city. Matt Roy, you take a look at Duhaime, Radish, all the way down to Logan Thompson. These were the moves that former GM Brian McClellan said were risky moves. On paper, they stand to be big upgrades. But it's for them. It's a bounce-back season from their former clubs. Some need a little bit more of a bounce-back than others, but this is an excellent opportunity, as I think that some of these players have a chip on their shoulder and are willing to impress their new coach, their new team, and the new fan base. And that is what has got me really excited about the start of this new season. For in particular, Pierre-Luc Dubois, if everyone wants to point to last season that he had an off season, but they forget about where he played before that and how he knocked it out of the park in other locations that he played at. He had one off season in LA. Some people said that he was underutilized or misutilized. He is looking for that big bounce back season. So that is what the perfect primer is for the start of this training camp, which is getting closer and closer each and every day. And I don't know about you Capitals fans, but I am excited about the start of training camp. There's some people out there that don't take much interest in it. I take a huge interest in it, as I do think that this is going to be an interesting training camp. I have listed my projected starting lines, who I think is going to be out there, line combinations. I also spoke about D pairings, those kind of things. But at this point, it's just speculation. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out on the ice. Who's going to stand up to the challenge? which guy that played with Hershey last year is looking for a big promotion. It is going to be most exciting, and more players continue to trickle into and at MedStar Ice Complex. Talking about those informal skates at MedStar Ice Complex, the Caps are gearing up for the upcoming season at MedStar Ice Complex, drawing more players to the ice with each passing day. Bigger names. We've seen some of the bigger names out there already looking to make an impression, looking to get a head start on the new season so the Capitals can hit the ground running when the start of the regular season begins. This Thursday, the ice rink in Arlington saw the addition of fresh faces to the mix. Taylor Radish, Bogdan Treneyev, Andrew Mangiapane, now donning the number 88 jersey, were among those who joined the informal skate sessions. The presence of Jakob Chychrun, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Matt Roy, Logan Thompson, and several other experienced players, along with the participation of AHL and junior players, added to the energetic atmosphere of the practice sessions. And what do we know for sure is that the start of September is right around the corner. And according to Alex Ovechkin's agent, he will be reporting to MedStar Ice Complex soon. I think that once you see him there, you're going to start to see many more of the other big names there. But it is exciting to see what this team has. And once you get all the big guns there, I'm talking Tom Wilson, I'm talking Ovechkin, the whole crew, you get those guys out on the ice, seeing what they have in the tank. That's when I think you'll start to see the beginning of chemistry. Even before the official start of the training camp, you might just start to see a rapport or a familiarity or a new relationship form. You could take a look at Pierre-Luc Dubois and Alex Ovechkin, for example. That could be some new chemistry out on the ice. And then maybe familiar faces that maybe weren't on the same line last season could show chemistry and could give opposing teams some different looks and some different options for the Capitals and their coaching staff. That is what has me excited about the potential of what is. Let's kind of put aside what we have it sketched as. Let's see what it will be in actuality. Talking about player performances during the session, Taylor Radish exuded enthusiasm, showcasing his sharp shooting skills and unwavering determination, making noteworthy plays. The players started the informal skates with customary skating and shooting drills, gradually transitioning to an extensive scrimmage. Jakob Chychrun's performance stood out as he displayed exceptional speed and adept puck handling capabilities, demonstrating his ability to orchestrate plays from the blue line while maintaining a keen awareness at both ends of the ice. He is one player that I have circled that I really want to see what he has out on the ice. I know that the Capitals were all in on him before he went out to Ottawa, and this was their opportunity. They made the most of their opportunities, and you took a look at what the Capitals gave up. They gave up Jensen and a draft pick to get Jakob Chychrun. That was a win-win for the Capitals, a big acquisition. And what are some of the things that I know historically about Jakob Chychrun already is he is a guy that's a good defenseman, which is a good thing. He's a blue liner, but he also has an offensive flair, very dynamic player, an exciting player to watch. I want to see what he has out on the ice, even as the practice sessions get going here. Washington's offensive capabilities, the Caps' acquisition of Chychrun from the Ottawa Senators in exchange for Nick Jensen at the beginning of the offseason reflects the team's ambition to bolster their offensive capabilities from the blue line. Listen, some defensemen don't have a scoring touch. Some do. Matt Roy, for example, is a guy that is a bit more of a stay-at-home defenseman. But you take a look at Chychrun, he is a guy that in his younger day was actually a forward and transitioned to a defenseman, a blue liner. So a good multi-dimensional look from Chychrun. It's going to be fun to watch. Chychrun's performance at the informal skates indicated that he could potentially pair up with John Carlson, enhancing the team's defensive prowess. Again, it's going to be a big thing, and there's going to be jobs out there that are kind of up for grabs, I'm going to say. You take a look at Alex Alexiev. He could be a spoiler and make his way out on one of the D pairings out there. You also look at Vincent Iorio, not to mention other players that could potentially be joining the Caps here at the camp. Chase Prisky. You take a look at Dylan McElrath. Some exciting storylines, that is for sure. Talking about the preparation for the upcoming season, leading up to the commencement of the training camp in mid-September, informal skates will persist, drawing more players to the rink for on-ice workouts as the Capitals prepare for the upcoming season. So big times for the Capitals to see how it all shakes out. I talked about this before on an earlier episode, but I spoke of Taylor Radish. How I have him kind of sketched out to be is to be that third line right wing, with Alexei Protas being the fourth line right wing. So, but those could be interchangeable. Taylor Radish and Alexei Protas could vacillate back and forth between the third and fourth line. A lot of question marks and excitement abounds. Just taking a look at how it's sketched out in general. Of course, things to keep an eye on: Dylan Strome, who I have sketched in as the top line, first line center, and Pierre-Luc Dubois, who I've sketched in as the second line center. But again, PLD could really just knock it out of the park and make it interesting for Dylan Strome. But Dylan Strome, as we know, is a guy that brings it each and every game and each and every practice. So it's not going to be easy. Widen the lens, 30,000-foot view here as well. Andrew Mangiapane, second line right wing, and Tom Wilson, first line right wing. Guess what? I could see those two alternate at certain points throughout the season as well. And then we take a look at the third line. Hendrik Slop here is the third line center, and second line left wing Connor McMichael. Connor McMichael, we know, can play center. Hendrik Slop here could switch back and forth with Connor McMichael. Sonny Milano is going to have to bring it this year. We know that for sure, because Jakob Vrana is going to be vying for a job as well. Many, many interesting storylines. So to just say that it's the start of training camp and blah, 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 we're going to kind of mail it in until the puck drops in the first game. Nonsense. This is going to be must-see TV. And of course, I will have you guys covered the entire way on Locked On Capitals. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about a potential injury to Martin Fehervary. What's the impact of that injury? Is he going to miss any time with the Capitals? I'll discuss straight ahead. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. This is a big thing. The NFL season is starting real soon. And I don't know if you're like me, but I actually follow a team that's outside of my home market. So that is why NFL Sunday Ticket is huge for me. I can watch all the Sunday games with NFL Sunday Ticket from my very own home. And guess what? FanDuel even makes it a little bit easier for us. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Martin Fehervary is a key piece to the Capitals blue line, but the word is out there that he's injured and he will not be able to participate in the Olympic qualifying event. So that what is some the other things that we know is that the start of the Capitals training camp is also going to be starting soon. What does that mean for Fehervary, who historically has been injured a fair amount and the start of the season? It is definitely something to consider. And with all the storylines that I spoke about in the previous segment, there is going to be another player that is going to be vying for his job, at least as a stopgap measure, potentially. Martin Fehervary's withdrawal from the Team Slovakia's roster for the 2026 Winter Olympic Qualifier. Unfortunately, Martin Fehervary has had to withdraw from Team Slovakia's roster for the 2026 Winter Olympic Qualifier and brought Slava due to an undisclosed injury. This setback has also delayed the start of the 24-year-old defender's 24-25 season. Not so good for Martin Fehervary, but an excellent opportunity for a blue liner that I spoke about in the previous segment that could really make their mark out on the ice. Even if it's a stopgap measure until Martin Fehervary is good to go, that's going to be key. Now, listen, we don't know the extent of his injury. We don't know if it's a major injury. What's been said is it's not anything too major. So that's the hope, is that he's not going to miss too much time. As you know, he led the team for a good chunk of the season in hits. He is a multi-dimensional blue liner, and I think the Capitals play that much better when Marty is out on the ice. Fehervary expressed his desire to support Slovakia in their quest for the Olympic Winter Games, but his ongoing health issues have made it impossible for him to participate in the upcoming qualifier. In a previous episode, I also spoke of Pierre Dubé. I also spoke of Antoine Keller as these qualifying events are going on. And if you are an everydayer of the show, you know that I'm not in love with these events. I understand that it's important for some of these players to represent their home country, but it also you take a look at what it does for the Capitals, for example. If Martin Fehervary misses any substantial amount of time, or say Pierre Dubé, or say Antoine Keller gets injured, what that will mean for the respective teams. Pierre Dubé, of course, we know that he played a huge role for Hershey. I think that he is going to be a guy that's vying for a job on the Capitals. So what if about an unfortunate circumstance where he got injured in what I'm going to go ahead and call extracurricular activity? The end of the day, don't forget who's cutting your check. It's the Capitals organization. That is always why I've had a problem with it. So talking about him not being able to qualify, instead he will be cheering on his teammates from the sidelines as he focuses on his recovery. Again, we are hoping for a speedy recovery for Martin Fehervary, as he is always huge out on the ice. So talking about changes in Slovakia's defensive line, prior to this development, Fehervary had been practicing alongside the top defender, but now that's responsibility changes to a different teammate. This unexpected turn of events is a disappointment for Fehervary, who was looking forward to representing his country in the qualifiers against Austria, Hungary, and Kazakhstan. It's unfortunate, as it does appear that this is something that's very important to Martin Fehervary. We wish him nothing but the best, but I guess I'm going to be a little bit selfish here and hope that he's ready to go near the start of the season. If it's not in the first game, shortly thereafter. I think that this team really needs to hit the ground running like they didn't last year. And I think that they're in a much better position now that the coaching staff is in place. Spencer Carberry, Mitch Love, those kind of players, or coaches rather, they're in place. Their systems have been implemented, that there's not going to be that learning curve. But, I mean, make no mistake about it, Martin Fehervary is a key piece on the Capitals blue line. And that, like I say, they always play that much better. We are hoping for a speedy recovery. Fehervary's preparation for 24-25 season with the Capitals looking ahead. Fehervary is preparing for his fourth full season with the Caps in the 24-25 season. The Caps have yet to finalize the date for their 2024 training camp, but it is expected to start shortly after the conclusion of the Olympic qualifier in Slovakia. So he will not be there for that event. There is always the possibility he could join the Capitals, maybe at the tail end of camp or at the start of the season. There's just too many things to consider as we don't have the full picture yet. Last season, Fehervary faced a series of injuries that caused him to miss a total of 16 games, with one injury sidelining him for 10 games. That's all part and parcel of being a physical guy, a guy that likes to hit, likes to throw the body around. That's big for the Capitals. Pushes guys off the pucks, a good defender, that kind of thing. But those guys that, exude a lot of energy and they're hitting guys into the corner, you're going to get dinged up. You're going to get injured. It's all a part of it. But despite that setback, the Capitals will still have representation at the Olympic qualifiers, with prospects Pierre Dubé and Antoine Keller set to play for France in their matches against Latvia, Slovenia, and Ukraine. So you take a look at it. It's a tough break for Martin Fehervary, as, like I said, I know that he was really looking to take part in that event, but, he's still a young man. There's still going to be an opportunity. But again, selfishly, what I hope for is that he's going to be good for the start of the Capitals season. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about one former Cap that decided to leave the team because he had the feeling that the Capitals would never win a Stanley Cup. Who is that player I'm talking about? I'll discuss straight ahead. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live event even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. For example, Game Time's 50% off Labor Day offer, you could use that for Nationals, for example. There is a lot to be excited about with Game Time, which makes getting tickets that much easier. Listen, oftentimes my favorite band, my favorite performer, my favorite comedian or sports team is playing, and I have a hard time finding tickets. Take the guesswork out of it with Game Time. So do that. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So a bit of a programming note as we get closer and closer to the start of training camp around mid-September. Locked On Capitals will be going back to 5 shows a week. So big news if you're a Capitals fan and a fan of Locked On Capitals 5 days a week. Until then, 3 days a week. And I want to thank you all for joining me through these summer months. All right, in this next segment here, we'll talk about one former Capital that had the impression that the Capitals would just not win a Stanley Cup. Quit wasting your time with the Caps. And it wasn't even about money at the end of the day. A lot of these big name players, upper echelon players, it's not about money. They're so filthy rich. It's about accomplishments. They've accomplished the fat paycheck, but they want to accomplish other things like winning Stanley Cups. That's what is important. That's why a lot of these guys lace up the skates. And that player I'm talking about is Mikhail Grabovski. Regrets leaving over the Washington Capitals. Mikhail, a former forward for the Caps, recently expressed his regrets over the decision to leave the team in favor of signing with the New York Islanders. You know what they always say. They think that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, but in usually the case, the grass is greener closer to the septic tank. But in this event, you take a look at it, Mikhail Grabovski, he decided that and it was in his impression and with other teammates that he had played with and other NHL people that he knows, that he didn't think the Capitals were up for winning a Stanley Cup. That is ultimately why he decided to go to the Islanders. During an interview with Hockey Cooking, Grabo revealed that he had been influenced to depart from Washington and enter into a 4-year contract with the Islanders in 2014. despite the initial encouragement to join the Islanders due to the belief that Washington would not be a winning team. And that was the perception, wasn't it? That's what many people thought, is that this team is good enough to make it to the playoffs. They have Alex Ovechkin. They can make it to the playoffs, but they'll never be good enough to win a Stanley Cup. Oh, how much changed in 2018. Grabo now reflects upon the decision with remorse. He emphasized that the choice was not driven by financial factors, but rather by the opportunity to compete for a Stanley Cup. Again, he's got to be kind of kicking himself a little bit, considering, well, the Capitals won the ultimate prize in 2018. Regrets and reflection, although Grabo acknowledges the strength of the Islanders as a playoff team and expressed admiration for their players, he admitted that watching Washington eliminate the Islanders in 2015 Stanley Cup playoffs and subsequently win the Cup 4 years later was a source of regret. Wah, 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 sad trombone. This sentiment arose from his sincere desire to achieve victory in the sport. Grabo, who played his final NHL season in 2016 and retired in 2019 with the Golden Knights without making an appearance, noted that the decision to depart from the Capitals had been a painful lesson in hindsight. And, you can't live your life in the rearview mirror. That was his perception. And it wasn't just his perception. Many people believed just that the Capitals were a good team. But before they won in 2018, many people believed that they were not good enough to ever win a cup, that Ovechkin and Backstrom and all these players were really good, but they weren't good enough against some of the bigger names in the spotlight out there. You're talking about the Rangers, you're talking about the Golden Knights, these kind of teams. They're not going to be as good. Tampa. But a lot changed for the Capitals in 2018. And I think that, for me, as a Capitals fan, as someone that does this show, I want to show the rest of the NHL that winning in 2018 wasn't just luck. It wasn't fluke. It wasn't a flash in the pan, that this team can do it again. Is it going to be this next season? Well, that would be an ambitious goal. I'm not going to say it's impossible. I would say it's improbable. My goal for this team is to make it to the playoffs. For one, anything less is not going to cut it, but a deeper push and take steps in that direction. So that's the big thing for the Capitals, is to get better than the year before. But hey, don't get me wrong. I would love nothing more than for this team to really surprise a lot of people, as many people are already speculating that the Capitals are not going to be very good next year, that the Metro got a lot better, and the Capitals, they made some big moves, but they weren't big moves. I'm talking Gensel, I'm talking Marchessault, I'm talking Stamkos, those kind of things. That, when the Capitals acquired PLD, there was a lot of snickering associated with that. So you take a look at it, and Grabo, his thoughts on it, that he didn't think that this team was going to win a cup. I don't fault him. Many people thought that then. But as it turns out, all he would have had to have done is just wait until 2018, and he could have joined the Capitals in the ultimate prize, winning a Stanley Cup. Listen, I want to thank you once again for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, and I want to thank you for making it your first listen of the day. Now go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On NHL in the description, so you don't have to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.